Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nostalgic Nerds podcast. I'm here with my co-host Renee, and we're going to talk a little bit about some fun stuff, very nerdy stuff for me, and it'll be very interesting, and hopefully we'll keep it under 5 hours because there's a lot
because
to
there's nothing
cover.
Mark likes talking about more than payment technology.
That's right. That's right. So, Renee, I used to live near the British Museum.
I do know that. Sam and I came to visit you, and you toured us around the British Museum, pointing out all the things that Britain has borrowed from other countries. I remember that.
Yes. I love the museum. It's great. And there's something that I love in the museum that probably only I love. And I never take anybody there because every time I take, the kids there, they just kind of roll their eyes and then they're off to something else. There's this one hall, I call it the Hall of Money. And it's a bunch of glass cases full of coins and banknotes, every era. Each one is a little tiny monument to the same human problem. How do you prove you'll pay someone back? It's kind of neat because it's this whole history of everything that humans have used to pay other people. I just love it. I've taken pictures. I've had, selfies with people from the PCI
You're
Council.
such a nerd. Like, you are a nerd. Who goes to, there's old money no one cares about. Let's really do a deep dive, while we're all sitting here. You're such a nerd. I love it.
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
so keep going.
I even took a picture once of the cards because they have credit cards in there, and they hadn't blanked out the card strip, So I said to a buddy, the British Museum isn't PCI compliant. So
Wait a minute, time out. I think I've been in that hall. I think I've been there, and I've spent too much time there. I was looking at, as soon as you get to, the 70s stuff, the very first, the very first credit cards, and the stuff that was important to me, right? The stuff that, I remember thinking, oh, look. Oh, I'm a nerd too. Damn it, man. I'm a nerd.
Yeah, it's really cool, but the room tells a story about trust and how we've been basically trying to automate that trust for thousands and thousands of years. So before coins or cash, there were clay tablets. And I like that room too in the British Museum, but so that's rooms 55 through 59, just in case you didn't know. And the money room, the Hall of Money, as I like to call it, is room 68. So, and just for everybody's benefit, this is written into the script because I had to write it down. But I already knew that was the case. I already knew that was those rooms. I used to go to the museum a lot, a lot. But anyways, on these clay tablets, Mesopotamian merchants scratched IOUs for grain or silver. And you think about this is really the world's first ledgers. You didn't need to see the trade itself. The tablet was the proof.
So Excel isn't
the actual
new.
Transaction.
Yeah, right? Excel's not new. Excel was on a clay tablet once, right? There's nothing new in the world at all.
That's right.
It's Excel 1.0. It's wet clay, right?
Yeah. That's right. Every little mark was, carved. It's a promise carved into mud, wax tablets, and but these clay tablets, they were, okay. Look, little side thing here. Bricks and clay don't last forever, but we still have these things from thousands of years, and to me is just that's the permanence, right, of trade, the permanence of a transaction. It's just sort of fascinating. But anyways, the progression here, we won't spend too much time on ancient history. There's sort of a rapid transition from clay to wax and different tablets and writing and that. But I do want to talk about one innovation, if you could call it innovation, that came out of medieval England, and they were called tally sticks. So another type, this is a little bit different. This isn't exactly a ledger, right? This is a way of recording a contract between two people. So you take a stick, you notch the sticks, and then you split the stick down the middle, and each person kept half of the record. And so you and when your transaction was closed out, when both sides had paired together, you could stick them together and see that the actual marks lined up. So you couldn't defraud somebody because they lined up and it was good to go. So it's a mechanism of trust, but I think that one's not so reliable, I guess,
Well,
as a
it's
mechanism.
just as reliable as blockchain is today. I mean, that is early blockchain, right? It's like I have a ledger. It's a public ledger. And
Yeah,
when we match it all up, we can say that it actually happened.
there you go. There you go.
It's not a bad idea. Like we're just making good on that same stick in a new technology
There you
era,
go.
right? That
Instead of
stick is technology, dude. That stick is technology.
it is definitely technology. It's a block of wood instead of a blockchain.
There you go.
All right. So look, we can go through these sort of early ledger systems, but I do want to talk about money here as well. So when people think about money, they think of fiat, whether it's coin or paper or cash or something like that. So I do want to talk just a little bit about that. Around 600 BCE, the Lydians start minting coins, so stamped lumps of electrum. And for those that don't know, electrum is a gold and silver alloy, and it's guaranteed essentially by the king's seal. So for the first time, the value isn't about what something is, it's about who promises it's real. And it's an actual thing, the electrum itself that carries the value rather than sticks or clay tablets or something like that. And it's a slightly different view here. It's a mechanism for the transfer of value, not necessarily the record of the transfer of value. So that's kind of cool. Now you can trade with strangers and still trust the metal in your hand. So it's a different mechanism of trust.
Oh, it's like Twitter, right? It's like Twitter and the blue check. So the king's face is the blue check that I can trust you, that you are authentically you. What you're giving me is essentially backed by a crown somewhere, right?
That's
Like
right.
it's got the king's face on it. I guess he's good for it. I actually find that really fascinating, right? That we go from proving the intangible, only intangible because it's like service or something tangible, but the transaction is the thing we cared about, to I have something in my hand waiting for a transaction.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
No.
crazy.
Yeah, so a lot of times people talk about the coins or minting, and there's people say, oh, well, the Chinese minted coins, and certainly they minted coins, but before they minted round coins, they actually minted what's called the spade and knife money. I know it's sort of, they're not really knives and they're not really spades, but they're bronze simulacra basically of that. So right around the same time in 600 BCE, which is kind of Turkey, the Lydians and Western Anatolia. Around the same time, between 1000 and 500 BCE, the Zhao dynasty is making these spade and knife money. And then, a couple hundred years after that, you see in the Qin dynasty, the standardized coins with the square, hole in them, which is how they strung them together in that. So that was, basically, that's where fiat currency comes from. These different mechanisms of minting, whether it's bronze or electrum or gold or silver, they all kind of start showing up all within a few hundred years of each other all over the world.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool, but you go from these kind of different materials. As I said, they're not really spades or knives; they just kind of look like it, but they represent values, but different materials, same instinct. You have to turn that trust into something you can carry around. So a few hundred years later, China takes it further still because, it's China. They're fast. They're bleeding edge. They're innovators here. And they invent paper notes under the Song dynasty. Lighter, faster, and easier to fake, unfortunately. But still the same kind of thing. IOU backed by someone, you believe in. So, that's, it's kind of a rapid crash course history in currency and money. I could spend hours
Yeah,
and
I could just
hours.
listen, but you could spend hours. It's clear,
Yeah,
right? I could just sit here and listen, but you could spend hours talking about it.
So, so let's take a big, giant leap forward, not because there weren't advances in economic trade and finance, but because the tech stayed so similar for hundreds of years. And of course, we're going to land in the Renaissance because we're talking, all this ancient history, these fiat currency, all of that stuff, and ledger technology, recording in paper, wood, clay, that sort of thing. But all of a sudden we go fast forward into the Renaissance. And in Italy, merchants in Genoa and Florence sit behind wooden benches, the banchi, which is where we get this word bank. They invent something far more powerful than coins. So take a guess. Something more powerful than coins.
I jarred spaghetti sauce. What? What, man? What?
It's gonna be very boring here. Double entry bookkeeping.
You're right.
Okay. All right.
Is
So
this credit debit equals zero? Because that's all Sam does all day, and I can't imagine that that's fun.
I know, you know what? We should have had Sam on here because he's a finance nerd, and I think that would have been kind of funny. But
So shout out to
anyways,
my husband, who's a finance nerd. Yeah.
yeah. But this is double entry bookkeeping. So it's codified by a Franciscan friar, Luca Pacioli. I'm not Italian. You could probably say the Italian better than me.
Patchouli.
Pacioli. He's a mathematician, and he writes this treatise, Summa de Arithmetica, in 1494. So the concept. Every debit has a credit. And the trust mechanism here is that every promise is a counter promise. And if one side doesn't balance, the system itself will basically tell you it doesn't balance.
Well, so math is the referee, right? So the math is holding. You can trust math, right?
Well, I mean,
Credit debit equals zero. You can trust math, right?
you better hope you can trust math.
I hope, right.
You were in audit for all those years.
Yeah, I don't
Okay,
trust
so
math.
I have to tell you my favorite Hollywood math story. Okay.
Give me it.
So I was working at one of the places I worked at when I was in Hollywood, and a producer, a well-known producer, I won't drop any producer names, but well-known producer comes in and he's talking about Hollywood accounting, and this is where I learned most of it from. And he says, Mark, the difference between a good accountant and a Hollywood accountant?
What?
The good accountant will tell you 2 + 2 = 4. And the Hollywood accountant will say, what do you want 2 + 2 to equal?
Yeah, that sums it up.
Yeah, pretty much. That's how Hollywood movies never make a single, penny. Right?
Not a penny.
Anyways.
Yeah. By design, not a penny. Yeah.
Well, exactly. All right. That's a whole nother episode. All right. But look, double entry bookkeeping, it could be the most important technical innovation in money, and maybe ever. I okay, I don't think it can be overstated here. It's thousands of years people operated without double entry. Equivalent value transfer isn't codified. It was implied. And the implication wasn't always as firm as we have today. So you think about those splitting of the sticks, right? And maybe that splitting of the sticks was, 3 goats and a bushel of wheat or something like that. Well,
or back in the day, a daughter. Right?
And what's the quality of the goods that are traded? Did you actually get the value that you wanted? Was it a fair trade? None of that comes up in double entry bookkeeping because it's absolute. And it's how every bank on earth today keeps score. All of the so-called digital ledgers, blockchain, any core banking system, all of them are just variations on the same idea. When value leaves one place, it has to arrive somewhere else. And that symmetry is what made global finance possible. You look at the Venetian trade systems, all of the different trade empires over the last 600-700 years. It's all because of double entry bookkeeping. Once you could trust the books, you could trust the trade, even across oceans. So from those ledgers came the great public banks, Genoa's Banco di San Giorgio and later Sweden's Stockholm Banco. These are some of the ones that the first to issue paper notes themselves. So suddenly trust wasn't local, it was institutional, transferable, portable. Instead of the face on the coin, it's the stamp
Yeah.
of the bank.
Yeah. So in a lot of ways, the bank becomes more powerful than the king.
Yeah, I guess
Right?
so.
Right? Like, and now it's been, I won't say it's been democratized, that's not what happened, but it
Yeah.
has been taken out of the hands of royalty to say, you don't back this, we back this. Like the global infrastructure is going to back this. And that sets us up for a very integrated banking system,
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
time you and I are born many, many, many years later.
Hopefully many, many years later. But I think it hasn't changed. Like that stuff, that doesn't haven't changed that all that much, right? Excuse me. And that's why I think it's a super important innovation. We don't think about double entry bookkeeping as a tech innovation, but it was a tech innovation, like super critical. And we wouldn't have financial auditing, we wouldn't have trade, we wouldn't have trade finance, we would like so many different things. I don't know. Yeah, okay. So maybe you know, other people might say the light bulb or electricity or the
I always say
transistor.
the sewing machine is a really important
There you go.
invention, but yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
Double entry bookkeeping, it might make it in my top 5 now. Congratulations.
All
It
right.
moved into
There
my
you go.
top 5. It was in my
All right.
bottom 5. It's now moved to my top 5.
Okay. So paper money is pretty dominant as a trade mechanism. We still have lots of coins and things, but we've kind of shifted where the signature on the paper becomes the new crown, the new authority. And from that point on, the real asset isn't necessarily the metal itself, but the confidence in that piece of paper, that bank, that institution that then can pay that out later.
Think about the psychology of that, though, because whenever here in America, whenever there's a lack of confidence in the economic, environment or the banking environment, we all run to gold. Like, we still do it. Like, as soon as
Yeah.
your confidence dies in that paper money, you run to that metal. It's like it really is buried in our collective psyches, probably from like that DNA back then, that if it's not
Yeah.
tangible, it doesn't mean anything. And so I need to go with tangible because this thing's about to mean nothing. Like, that's really amazing that we can find the roots of that all the way back in the Renaissance. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
definitely. I know it's pretty cool. And even back when, 600 BCE and Electrum, it was intrinsically valuable because it was stamped on something that somebody wanted to make jewelry out of
Right.
or, whatever. Now it's, gold teeth and grills and, bling.
Bling. I was gonna say, and bling. Yeah, I get it.
And bling.
So, all right. Well, so I still live in America. So let's talk about what a mess the 13 colonies made of this idea, right? Every colony issued its own paper notes. Some were backed by gold, some by land, some by just, hey, good vibes. That would be California. Good vibes. Okay, they weren't one of the 13 colonies, but I could see it happening. And a prayer. Right? Like that's
Right.
that's what we're going to base it on, right? You could cross the river and your money was worth nothing. And did they have money exchanges? Like, could you cross the river and find some guy who would exchange your money for you? Could you do that?
Yes, but it's the trust problem, right? You cross the river and there are definitely exchanges, but if you can print your own promise, right, the fragmentation of trust increases. So it becomes, and then how do you guarantee a rate? How, what's a fair exchange value between, Virginia paper and Maryland paper. But
I mean,
there
good
were
thing there was
definitely
no train. Like, good thing you couldn't actually go anywhere because that would become a problem, wouldn't it? Like, there's no easy way to get anywhere. So maybe it was okay for a while, but it wouldn't be okay forever, right? I mean,
right.
if Georgia was going to sell peaches to Pennsylvania who had lumber, like you were going to have to figure this out. Each of those merchants had to figure out a way to
Yeah.
make that work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They'd have to get paid somehow. They want to get paid in crown, in gold, and then they would, ship their goods and all that
Well,
stuff.
so
But
okay, so this is
um,
the time of the Revolutionary War, right? These are the colonies. This is where we're trying
yeah,
to find our freedom, and in that, people were hoarding foreign coins, so Spanish
yeah,
dollars, British pounds, anything that actually held value. And when the United States issued Continentals to fund the revolution, nobody trusted them because why would you? Why would you? Here's a bunch of guys being like, "No, seriously, give me money. We're going to go against the king." It's totally worth the investment. Like, can you imagine? I couldn't even imagine being like, "Yeah, you know what? That sounds fair. I'm gonna go ahead and back that." No, you would want to be able to actually buy things one day, right? And
yeah.
they depreciated so fast that not worth a continental became an insult, right? So, like, hey, I got a horse. Yeah, that horse isn't worth a continental. Like, oh, dude, come on. You don't
That's
need to be that harsh.
the sick burn. Yeah, I mean, you can't mandate trust. You have to earn it. So the larger, more credible banks, state banks, and then eventually the first bank of the United States, thank you, Alexander Hamilton, step in to centralize that promise. The architecture of modern banking begins around one simple question: who keeps the ledger itself honest?
So whether it's a king, a banker, a startup with a blue logo, right? We're still buying the same thing. We're buying credibility. That's when we say it like that, it seems so super sketchy. Super
Yeah.
sketchy.
There's a there's a book. I'll have to put this in the show notes, but there's a book I got. So my daughter, the artist daughter, and I, when I would drive her to school, we would listen to Planet Money. Great
Oh,
podcast. Yeah, great podcast for money nerds.
right.
um, and one of the guys, I think is Jacob Goldstein, wrote a book. It was called Money, the Story of a Totally Made Up Thing, or something like that.
That's a good title. Yeah, it should be
Yeah,
that.
and
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, so I'll have to put that in the show notes. But I highly recommend that book. It's a great book. So, all right, let's move forward because we're in revolutionary times. Then we get centralized banks, and let's move to the early 20th century here, where trust actually shrinks back down again. So cash and checks backed by banks, these are dominant payment methods. Letters of credit start to become more useful and distributed to more and more people, and more accessible, I should say. And this is where I want to start to talk about the rise of store credit. So you've got these kind of store credit systems, essentially chalk marks behind the counter, IOUs in the till, right? So you go into a local mercantile and you say, I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a bag of grain today. Right.
Right.
And then they take that, on credit. No bank, no government, and it's just reputation and the shopkeeper's memory. And if you didn't pay your tab, that grocer or that general store, your mercantile, whatever, they didn't need a collection agency. They had gossip.
Oh, it's like when your check bounces at the. Did you ever see that episode of The Office where Dwight is looking for Michael and he goes into the Chinese restaurant and he's like, "Did you see this guy?" And there's a picture of him on the
No.
wall because he ate
Oh,
and ran.
no.
Like, that's what it is. It's dine and dash. Like, I can't get you any other way, so I'm just going to embarrass you in public, right? I'm going to
Well,
post your photo.
yeah, and I've seen that even in practice here in the UK. There was our local store, our little corner shop in the village we lived in. They would on the glass, in the store, they would take pictures of people that shoplifted and then post the pictures of the people on the glass, and then with the
No.
caption, "I'm a thief." So,
Wow.
yeah,
Old
yeah.
habits die hard over there. I'm just gonna
I
say
guess
that.
so. Yeah, yeah. So clay tablets to paper, right? Promises for to grocery tabs. The tools are changing, but the message doesn't, right? Do you trust me to pay you back? All right. So if that question never changes, we just keep inventing new ways to say yes, right? There's new innovations around money all over the place. So let's talk about, a little bit further in the early 20th century. So we've mastered the promise, right? The next question was, how do you move the money? So we start to build these different rails to move money around. Checks, postal orders, gyro transfers, they're all designed to send promises instead of people. Okay, a little joke. How do you actually manage cross-border payments today?
I don't
You stick a bunch of currency in a bag, and you send somebody across the border. Like, forever, that was how you managed trade imbalance. You literally had to, get currency, and then you stuck it in a bag, and you took it across the border,
like the
right?
Pony
So that
Express, you were just like, "Dude,
yes.
good luck. I hope nothing bad happens to you, and if you lose this money, don't come back." Like, that's how we
Yeah.
did it. Wow.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
kind
I
of
mean,
adorable though, right?
yeah.
A whole
Yeah.
economy powered by, like, written notes that had to be physically carried across town. The first
Yeah.
real and, honestly, that's the first UX problem then. Like, that user experience is just really bad. It's
Yeah.
slow, and it's always missing the last signature. I mean, that's just terrible. What a terrible
Yeah,
way to
yeah.
do business.
But if you think about it, like, okay, you're trading this piece of paper around that says at some point you can redeem it for gold. Okay, well, somebody's going to want that gold at some point, right? Especially if you put that piece of money into another bank and the bank says, well, I can't just hold paper. I actually have to hold reserve. So at some point, they have to take that piece of paper and they have to ship it to whatever bank it is that issued that, and then say, "Give me my actual gold," so they can transport it back to their vault and then stick it in a vault. Like, that's cross-border currency, exchange right there, and that's how it happened for centuries. Even to this day, that happens. Even to this day, that happens.
Wow.
Alright, so I'm sorry. Sorry, again, little nerdy here. So, anyways, my mid-century cities like London and New York had literal armies of clerks sorting checks by hand, basements full of paper, each sheet just a little tiny act of trust in transit.
It's like manual fintech. Like, you fintech guys think like you're the bleeding edge. This was the bleeding edge. We had paper
Yeah,
checks and lots of
paper
people to
checks,
sort them.
paper checks.
It
And
would
I
take
even
even during my time, it would take 10 days for a
yes,
check to clear because it had to go through all that stuff, right? Like y'all getting direct deposit and it's in your account the next day. You don't have any idea how lucky you are. Like, you have no
yeah,
idea. That's not how it
yeah.
used to work. Right.
I know. Like, I'm trying to remember. Boy, when did I have my first like direct deposit check?
Not until after the ATM machine, and that was in the
Yeah,
80s,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
it comes after
Definitely.
that.
Yeah. I mean, it was probably after my wife and I were married. Yeah, actually, I think that my first, like, real gig, I would get paper checks, and it was at that place. I worked there for a few years. It was during that time, and this was, like, the late mid to late '90s. That was when we transitioned to direct deposit while I was working there. So we'd get, like,
Right.
when I first first started working, I'd get a paper check,
Right,
and I
and you
would
would put
literally
on the
have to
back for
drive it.
deposit
Yeah,
only, and if you had an ATM nearby, you could deposit it in the
yeah,
ATM.
yeah, yeah,
You didn't have to take it into the bank, but before then, you'd actually have to walk it into the bank,
yeah.
have a deposit slip that you filled out with your account number on it,
Another
hand
piece
them
of
both
paper.
have all that paper to somebody, and they'd say, "Great, it's gonna post in 8 to 10 days." Like,
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, that's the
and
world
I
we lived
think
in.
yeah, that's definitely the world we live in, and I think it's acceptable, right? Because of the technology of the time,
Yeah.
but it's not. But it wasn't. It reached a certain scale, right? That industrial scale, but there was still friction in the system. So the next kind of question, right? Like we're talking about the '80s and the '90s. sure, there are big systems, and we'll talk about some of those in a second. But the economy still operated on paper, checks and check slips and deposit slips and that sort of thing. And so the obvious question is, what if you could automate those things? Like, this is the common theme, right? We talk about this all the time.
Hmm.
Is there's a piece of technology, it does a certain thing, and then you automate that thing. And that's what starts to happen in the economy, whether that's with checks and paper and ATM or with credit. So let's talk about credit.
Yeah, it's because it's my favorite part of the story, and it starts with a guy forgetting his wallet, which, you know, I'm not going to say it happens a lot. Well, you know what? I don't even know anybody carries cash anymore. So he forgets his wallet. In
Yeah.
1950, businessman Frank McNamara can't pay for dinner in New York. Out of that embarrassment comes the Diners Club card, right? A cardboard charge plate that lets you pay later.
Well, we just talked about humiliations,
Is
public
it good?
humiliations.
Is it good?
So
Like,
that's
catalyst
right.
for innovation. How do we innovate?
There you go.
We suffer humiliation. Yeah. But the best ideas start with panic, right? Within a decade, you got Bank AmeriCard, MasterCharge, American Express,
Yeah.
reputation turning into infrastructure. And I
Yeah.
think that changes everything. For me, like, that is just as big of a change as double entry bookkeeping.
Ooh, easy now, easy. Oh, don't throw down. I, I think I think that's probably true in those markets that accepted those things, because not because it was sort of cool and innovative, but because how do I say this? It provided a scale,
Yeah, there
right?
you go. Yeah.
And if you think, again, this is the common theme, right? People still need to pay for stuff, right? Whether that's 1,000 years ago or today. And what these systems did was they mechanized that payment and made it scalable and faster and, theoretically less expensive to process the actual act of processing that money. So the rails get faster, right? But the logic doesn't actually change. That level of scale is really what was felt in the Western world, certainly in the States, Western Europe, parts of Asia, huge innovations there. So, let's talk about the 70s, right? The 70s, the
Ooh,
decade I was born in.
there you go.
Yeah, money moves by wire instead of by hand. So, yes, all of these things, check and paper and all that stuff. There's a handwritten element, but once it gets into the ledger, right? There's a process to put it into a big computer with tapes and reels and green screens and all that. But before these sort of national systems we know now, in the States, each of the 12 Federal Reserve banks ran their own clearing and settlement networks. So basically 12 different machines, schedules, codes, all of that stuff.
So 12 different bureaucracies, right? And somehow we have to coordinate all that in order to, I would assume, close with the Treasury every night. I mean, we still have to deal with the
Right.
Treasury of the United States, and with 12 different people doing things. I mean, you and I did IT support. Can you imagine like 12 different kinds of computers in the environment with 12 different
Yeah.
kinds of laptops and phones? And like, it just makes mayhem. It's absolute chaos and mayhem. So what
It
you're
is.
telling
It
me
is.
is like the 1970s from a money-moving perspective was just complete mayhem.
Yeah, very regional, which is why, you didn't see a lot of national bank chains in the States. Check volumes themselves were exploding because it's a convenience factor. It's easier to write a check than it is to carry around cash. They started to automate these check clearing systems regionally. You had, things like in California, there was a bunch of California banks that built their own electronic payroll experiment. They called it SCOPE, the Special Committee on Paperless Entries.
Ooh.
They had a special committee on paperless. Like,
Oh, man.
you think about today, everything is paperless.
Yeah.
But back then, you had a special committee. the Fed saw that it was working and realized that the real bottleneck in the system wasn't paper, it was the silos, the individual banks. So eventually the Fed systems were stitched together under one operator, the Richmond Federal Reserve Bank. And that's why all of the technology today sits in Richmond, basically. If you go to the technology organization at the Fed, they're all in Richmond. And by the mid 70s, the national ACH system was born. So ACH stands for Automated Clearing House. It becomes the kind of the quiet plumbing of U.S. payments. The reason your paycheck appears in your account instead of your mailbox, so sort of.
And you know what? No one ever notices that unless it fails. So it can you imagine? Like, I was supposed to get paid. All of my rent needs to come out of that payment, and it didn't go. It didn't go. Like, are we bankrupt? Are you stealing money? What can I sue you for it? What is going on here, right? And so this idea that the guarantee that check goes into that system or that transfer goes into that system and it's going to go to the right people at the right time, that was all designed to be good. And you're right, no one ever notices until it fails. If it fails, right, everybody screams and yells and carries on. And the other thing, I would say the other good thing about it is, if you are the reason it's failing, you keep writing bad checks, they'll arrest you, put you in jail, leave you, forget putting your face on the window. You're going down for grand theft, right? I mean, it is a good mechanism for, people who do ill things. But if I'm just a law-abiding citizen who's waiting on a transfer from my bank and I don't get it, I would be seriously worried about that. And I would wonder if I was sitting there in 2008 all over again.
Did you ever go to the grocery store with your parents, and did they use those check guarantee machine things?
No, but they would just write out a check at the grocery store. That's why the grocery store has that little ledge there. It used to be where you wrote your now you just hang there like when you're bored, but it used to be where you wrote your check.
That's where you write your checks. Yeah. Well,
I remember 2 forms of ID. You had to bring 2 forms of ID so they knew that was really your check. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, in California, this might be sort of the after effects of that scope thing. But I remember when I was a kid, we'd go to Alpha Beta. That was our local grocery store. That was the name of the grocery store, Alpha Beta. And there was a little terminal essentially. So if you knew you were going to write a check, you had to get your check guaranteed first.
Oh, we didn't have this.
Before, and I wasn't sure if it showed up on the East Coast or not, but
no,
definitely on the West Coast, because there's a bunch of deadbeats, writing bum checks in Los Angeles, right?
And Los Angeles is a big place where people can do that, and probably I was in Pittsburgh. They really were putting your photo up on the grocery store still, right?
Probably. There's probably a much more local feel for some of the neighborhoods that you were in versus mine. But there was a terminal. And if you knew you were going to write a check, you had to, before you were checked out, so you don't know how much or anything like that. And it didn't really matter because they kind of worked on average ticket size and stuff like that.
Okay.
But so there was a little box, and it looked like it had a phone on it. And you put some numbers in. I don't remember exactly how it worked, but you slide your check into the system, and it had a Micker reader, which is the magnetic code reader, which would read the magnetic numbers. I don't know if people know this, but the printer ink on checks is magnetic.
I didn't know that.
Well, there you go. Technical innovation. And it's a special ink and, just toner and all that, whatever. But it would read that stuff. It would then transmit a message to this check guarantee service. And the check guarantee service would be like, I'm going to check to see if that those account details have been used in a bad check. And if they hadn't been, then and I think that there was a second, kind of look up into a bank to see if you had available funds and stuff like that. And then it would literally print out on the back. It would go dot matrix, thing. Because
I remember that, right? You would run through a machine, and pop out the other end. Yeah.
And then it would have this like a guarantee stamp on it, and then you would take that check to the checkout stand when you were ready to check out, and then it was already checked, and it had already done the driver's license thing, and it had already done the,
I
all
think
that
we
stuff.
did do all this, but you did it at the register. So the person at
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
register took your thing, ran it through this thing, and came back
yeah,
out, and then they would be like, write on it, and then but you already filled it all out and handed it to them, I think is how that
yeah,
worked.
yeah. But the whole point of that, it wasn't that, like, it wasn't a check process, right? It was a trust process,
Yeah.
and that's what, like, checks were starting to degrade even in that period. When I was a kid, mid 80s or whatever, checks were starting to degrade from a trust perspective. And I think that sort of set us up for this really, y- you know, explosive time around cards, but sort of a unique American thing. But in lots of other countries, they had their own kind of system of rails and systems of trust. So you had what's called BACS in the UK, EFT pause in Australia, the gyro networks in Germany and the Netherlands. They're all chasing kind of that same idea. If you can trust the network, you don't need to trust the courier.
Well, it's another scale problem, right? Like I
Right.
can't, right? I can handle 15 of the buckets, but I don't want to handle, 22 gallons of water, one handful at a time. Like it makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gosh, man. So, little side story here. Coins. I hate coins, because coins are not scalable. So, when I was at various banks, I had to manage. I had all the ATMs for HSBC, and I had all the ATMs for Virgin Money, and coin machines. Freaking, the British government says, you know what? You need to have an ATM that takes coins. And I'm
Oh, you mean like the British pound, like that?
like you got to be able to deposit coins into an ATM machine,
That's
and
craziness, right?
it is craziness. It's freaking
It's
crazy.
not my fault you don't have a $1 bill. Like, I don't like, that's not my fault. It's not my fault.
It's not
Yeah.
my fault. Well, but those things are expensive and they don't scale. And yeah, well, and they're heavy. And somebody broke the concrete floor of one of the branches because they dropped a stupid coin
See,
counting machine. Anyways, yeah, but basically, we have these kinds of national systems. But in the 80s, America's money itself gets kind of split into these two completely different tracks, okay? So ACH rails, which we talked about, these kind of national big, rails, they handled these kind of quiet, predictable flows. Payroll, mortgages, utilities, right? Your bills. People paid their bills with checks. They're all processed with batch and paper process systems. They're across enormous mainframes at the Fed and all these different clearing banks. And then meanwhile, you know, quietly, St. Louis and San Francisco, the card networks are kind of exploding across retail. It's faster, it's visible, there's branding, there's consumer branding, lots of consumer branding spend, and it's driven by that consumer spending and the brand trust, right? Do you remember the commercial? I think it was Visa, the check card Visa commercials, where they would ask for ID or something. There's all these famous people, and they asked them, Steven Spielberg or whatever, and he like you look at the camera like with this, what are you talking about? I'm giving you my check card. I don't need ID because you used to have to submit ID with a
yeah,
check.
you
Well,
did with a check.
with a
Yeah.
Visa check card, it's your signature, and off it goes. But this they're kind of built for different sorts of use cases. ACH was all about that reliability and scheduled certainty, and cards were about flexibility and instant gratification. So there's kind of two different technologies, but both are solving that same kind of problem: how to how to move trust faster than the paperwork itself.
And that's exactly how it felt on the other side of the counter, right? Because I remember getting my first direct deposit for the first time. That was ACH. It was almost magical. It just appeared like, oh my God, it's Friday. I have money. Like that's how it felt. Like magically, I can go out tonight because I have money. Everybody, and I feel like when you swipe the card at the store, people didn't trust it yet, right? I remember having my first, we called them MAC cards, like machine access cash, MAC,
Yeah, there
right?
you go.
The MAC card, you could have a Visa MAC card.
Yeah.
Well, now you can use this card anywhere you wanted to go to. So I can go to the Gap, use my MAC card. I don't have to go to the machine and get the cash. It's a Visa card, but that money came out of my bank account, not from Visa.
Yeah.
Right? And there was a whole generation that didn't trust that. They were still bringing the checkbooks, right? But then my generation was like, forget it. I'm never writing a check if I don't have to.
Exactly.
But what came with that, though? The same mechanisms because we don't have online banking yet, right? Like we just have a card that can just take money out of an account. So if you're not keeping track of that in your check ledger, you're in trouble because you can overdraw it and they will let you and charge you a ton of money for it, right?
That's right.
And so like those kind of things, I think, were just like, I can carry this around. It can give me access to my money in a way that I never had before. And it was sort of like magic, but it would fail me if I didn't have enough money in my account, right? But it would only fail me after it took all the money out of the account plus $50, because then they could get me with an overdraft charge, because all the things about the checking account still apply to that checking Visa card.
Yeah. You could, instead of writing a bounce check, it would, you could still get your stuff at the Gap, but then you get charged 3 times the amount or whatever. Yeah.
And
Do you
had
remember
to
telephone?
keep that receipt. Dude, you had to keep the receipt because you had to go. My dad, to this day, even though he has online banking, will still take out all the receipts, do all the math, because he feels like
boy.
if and it's a good control. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's a good manual control.
Yeah, it is. It is a good
I
control.
know how much I spent, and my online banking should say the same thing. I think Sam and I are just like, online banking's right. Like, I don't know if we should trust it like that.
Trust is not a control, Renee.
I know that. And luck is not a strategy. I get it.
Yeah. It's funny, like, how many times have we said that? Trust is not a control, right? But we trust the financial system.
We do.
So much.
We do.
So much. And I think that trust it's developed because the technology has been so reliable for so long. And, every time there's a new innovation, it just takes a little bit, to develop that trust. But, that like ACH is about building confidence, that invisibility. Cards is that confidence and convenience, but underneath it, it's all settled through the same sets of rails, 2 rails, 1 financial truth at the end of the day.
Okay, and we should say all this talk of ACH and cards is a very American story, but the rest of the world was building its own rails too, right? Like, as we're over here innovating, the rest of the world is doing what it needs to do in order to meet these things.
Yeah. It in Europe, and I won't go through all of this stuff, but Europe, you've got, BACS in the UK, Gyro, mentioned some of those, France, SIT, and eventually get SEPA, Single European Payment, something or other. I should know that. But yeah, you've got all those sorts of things in Europe.
And in Asia, the modernization came fast once the technology did. So Japan's interbank networks of the 70s, Hong Kong's chat, Singapore's fast, and later Alipay and WeChat Pay turning phones into wallets. And I think that's where, like, I find my sweet spot. Like, I'd buy anything on my phone. I'm terrible. Ask my husband. I'm terrible like that. Like, I had to take Amazon, the app, off my phone. It's too easy to slide to buy.
Yeah, slide to buy. I don't like slide to buy. Latin America went its own path. National clearinghouses like SITRAF in Brazil and SPEI in Mexico. So all of this stuff kind of develops all over Latin America in different ways.
And then all across. How do you say this acronym? MENA.
Middle East, Northern Africa.
Oh, I don't hear it that way.
Oh, yeah.
I don't ever hear it that way. All right, well, that's fair. You've got traditional bank networks alongside new real-time systems in the Gulf and huge mobile money ecosystems in places like Egypt, Jordan, and Morocco that blend telecom and finance. And I think that, especially when we talk about the continent of Africa, I feel like Africa comes into with that. I mean, talk about a place that just completely missed the whole wired network thing. Like they
Yes,
didn't even
totally.
bother doing it. It's like they went from
Yeah.
nothing to cell phones everywhere. Like the
Yep.
wireless thing, and they have to. That infrastructure is just easier to do than
Yep.
burying a bunch of cables, right? They never went through that infrastructure thing. So to see them do that, like of course it's a blend of telecom and finance. That's how it would
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
them. And yeah, it makes sense that that happened for sure.
Yeah. Anytime we're in Morocco, I mean, I got 4G, 5G all
Yeah,
throughout
isn't
the
it
country.
amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
That's
do
awesome.
everything that way. It's amazing.
Yeah. So lots of different regions, different problems, but they all kind of build these rails that let trust travel faster than people could walk it, right? So it's the automation, the mechanization of movement of money. And I think the key here is that even though the methodologies of some of these systems might be different, and you have kind of interoperability issues in some cases that need to be hashed out by things like SEPA, you have the same concepts of trust and Renee,
Mm-mm.
my favorite,
Mhm.
double entry. I'm going to get paid and you're going to get your stuff. And when the books settle up, we're both happy.
So by the 1980s and 90s, the rails fade into the background. ATMs, online banking, early e-commerce, all designed to make paying invisible. And when you stop feeling money leave your hand, you stop treating it like it's real. And you think your liquidity is so vast and deep. It's not. And then your habits become so like ingrained in that, and it shouldn't be. And it's like I feel like we're to blame. Mark and I are fully to blame for
Yes,
this.
we are totally to blame.
We were the ones that convinced you to buy cookware online. Like, it's all our fault. Let me
Yeah.
apologize now, just so
Yeah.
I can one day go to heaven. I'm sorry that I got
Yeah.
you used to buying cookware online. And it's true, though. I feel like, to me, money is an abstract concept. And I knew when it was real. And it's still, these days, it seems like an abstract. And I can't imagine being born in 2000 and living
Oh,
your
I
life in
know.
this commerce environment and thinking the whole time it seems like an abstract concept. It's what you've
Yeah.
always known, right? You don't,
Yeah.
a lot of I don't have money in my wallet ever. Yeah, don't mug me. Like, just generally speaking, don't mug me because I never have any cash ever.
Okay, so here's my wallet, and I've got actual plastic bill notes here because they're
No.
plastic here in the UK. But you know what? I've carried these same bills
Yeah, right.
around for like 6 months now. So, I never
Just in case
spend it.
the ATM fails and you need a cab. Like, that's why
Yeah,
you should carry
yeah.
cash, right?
I normally don't, but it just so happened that, like, it just was in my wallet, and so, yeah. That physical proof of payment, the note, whether it's a plastic one I carry around my wallet, the receipt, that, whatever, the handshake, they get replaced, right, by confirmation screens, the dopamine hit of click to buy, add to cart, add to art, click, click, click. And that itself becomes its own currency.
Exactly, and that tiny buzz of convenience, it changes behavior more than any interest rate ever could. Once it feels frictionless, we start to believe it's effortless, right?
Yeah.
And then just doing it is just like, I mean, my gosh, you should see me shop for groceries. I haven't been to a grocery store in like 15 years. It's all online for me. I
Yeah.
roll by the place, they chuck it in the car and I keep driving. Like it's not I haven't done that in so long. Like there is no I don't go grocery shopping, like put my chip in I don't do any of that. It's all
Interesting. Do
transaction.
you so we have it delivered. So you drive by, huh? Drive by
Yeah, I do the
delivery.
drive-by thing at Target. You
Mm.
just pull up, you say, I'm in spot 2." You know what their
Interesting.
turnaround time is for that? Like, from the time I pull up and say, "I'm in spot 2," they got 2 minutes and 2 seconds to get it to me, which is
Really?
way quicker than if you go in that stupid store, stop for yourself, and then
Oh
stand in that
yeah.
line for 25 minutes, right? So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I almost never go, and that started during COVID, and they just kept it, and then so
Yeah.
I started doing it during COVID, and I too just
Yeah.
kept it, right? It's more
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
convenient that way.
There's an interesting thing, we'll probably get to this in some other topic, but convenience shopping has a different spend pattern than regular everyday spend categories, right? You walk in, you're just sort of, conveniently there. Casual buying maybe is another way to say it, right? So Target is in that sort of everyday spend category, but also in that casual spend category. So when delivery happens for them, or, this sort of build your basket and then check out and you drop it in your cart. That casual spend category drops for them, but then that everyday spend category is increased.
Yeah.
So but the higher margin is on those casual spend categories.
Yeah, because if
usually.
you got me in the store and I'm looking at end caps and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I need another dog toy, and I don't.
Yep.
I'll buy it
Yeah.
anyway, right? Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's why I don't do it. As a matter of fact, I could just do it and just to bag Target one more time. The online app is so bad that if it were any better, I'd spend way more money. The Target, just for Renee, keep it as bad as you possibly can. I just shop what I've already bought and we're good. You and I are good, right?
That's interesting. Yeah, some other time.
We should talk about that. The evolution of the buyer. It definitely has gone from somebody came to your house to sell you something to you went to a store to buy something to you went to a mall that had a lot of stores in it to buy something to you went online, and now who knows where we're going to go next? Virtual malls.
Right.
We'll have our VRs walking around the mall again.
Do you remember that? What was that place? Mall, something, wasn't it virtual mall, something like that?
Is that what it was?
And didn't they? Yeah. Oh my gosh, I was just remembering the early .com, and there was that site that was like that. I swear it was the first marketplace, essentially based. It was it took a bunch of online retail stuff and stuck it in one place.
All in one place.
Yeah, because the idea was that the internet was a digital manifestation of the physical world. And so if you had malls in the real world, you would have a digital mall. And they didn't last long because it
wasn't hard to type www.guest.com, right?
Exactly.
And then save the bookmark. That's not hard. I don't need to go all over the place.
Anyways, all right. So let's come back to our money story here. The banks are trying to kind of scramble to keep up on all of this technology here. You have on the card systems, you have acquirers, issuers, gateways, all of these different pipes that are all complex, and almost no one can see the whole system. But underneath all of this, it's still the same ledger logic. Value leaves one place, appears in another, and someone has to keep the books balanced.
Meanwhile, we're just hoping the Wi-Fi doesn't cut out mid-purchase. I think this is a big problem, reliability, right? This idea that it's always there. I mean, AWS just went down on Monday.
Oh,
right?
I know. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so Monday, I'm driving to a conference and I'm in the middle of the mountains. So if you go, do you know where Idlewild is? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So before you get to Idlewild, you hang a left and you can go into Anza and then eventually Temecula and then you can end up in San Diego. That's where I'm driving.
Yeah.
At that fork in the road thing, there's a little restaurant. It's called Paradise Valley Cafe. And I've never been there, totally wanted to stop. Walk in and she's like, I got to tell you something, and it's okay if you walk out. And I'm like, all right. She's like, systems are down. I can only take cash. I'm like, we're good. And she's like, all right. And so me and my mom and sat down and everything. And she's like, oh, hey, for absolutely no reason, it's back. And I'm like, she's really angry about this whole thing. She's like, I lost so much business and I still don't know what happened. And that's when my phone ding and said AWS went down. And I'm like, can I tell you something? And she's like, what? I'm like, you were a victim of a cloud outage. And she's like,
yep.
Well, how? And I'm like,
exactly.
Good question. Let me just explain it. The cloud is just someone else's computer. And
that's
it
right.
crashed, right? And so, reliability is the most important thing when we're spending money or we're moving money or we expect to see money. Honestly, if I didn't have that money in my wallet when we walked in there, we would have had to turn around and walk back out because we wouldn't have been able to pay with a credit card.
Yeah, talking about Amazon is a good way to transition here. We're talking about essentially entering the era of outsourced trust, right? As so many people have trusted AWS, our wallets, our banks, networks, all of the clouds, all of this stuff, it's all outsourced trust, essentially.
And we don't verify the math anymore. We trust the logo, the lock icon, the brand name, the vibe. That's like the trust verification label on the bottom of the website. It feels legitimate and we assume the money is moved, right?
Yeah. Oh my. I mean, this whole AWS thing is,
How much I hadn't realized how much of the world's ability to transact would be stopped in its tracks,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
because of an AWS DNS problem. I
Did you
mean, don't
see
you think we
that?
should have had DNS figured out 20 years ago? I felt like we were kind of on the road to figuring that out.
No kidding. But like, I saw crazy stories where people's like water, they have like a water filter thing, that just filters water on their desk and it wouldn't work. Like,
People's beds wouldn't change.
yeah,
Like if you had one of those like
beds.
right? If it was connected to a cloud for whatever reason, if you connected your stupid washing machine to the cloud, you couldn't
Oh,
do anything with it, right? Like this whole
I-
idea that the cloud is infallible and that network fabric is so resilient. I'm not going to lie to you, man. I'm an analyst. I've sat down with those guys and said, "Here, there's a thing in physics that actually says it's a theorem that says if it's physically possible, it's inevitable." And here's what they would say
yeah,
to me. Renee, we understand you used to run data centers and all that, but like, I don't think you understand how resilient this is. I'm like, I don't think you understand that the most resilient car engine still runs on one
still,
belt, right?
that's
Like
right.
everything has single points of failure. I don't care what your
Yeah,
fabric looks like. Like you
yeah,
take down two substations in the grid, take down two substations in the grid,
yeah,
and none of us have
nothing. Yeah,
anything. Like, so why do you think you aren't part of this? And the
yeah,
I'm just going to say it because I'm a jerk and I'm an analyst and it's my job. But the arrogance of that is almost
yeah,
hard to take,
yeah. Well, especially on a service like DNS, which is this is not the first time that the interwebs have felt this
right?
kind of massive impact because of DNS, whether that's a Cloudflare thing or DNS poisoning, is it an attack thing? I mean, it's a big thing. It's a big deal. I don't know. It's very, we talked about this in the amusement park episode around failsafe. And I feel like designers of products today that rely on cloud, rely on things like AWS, they're not they're not failing safe, you know?
No, they're not. You're right.
And
You're right.
oof,
Like,
you
should the
know,
backup to that stuff be in your own data center again? Like, should you like it's okay if you do most of your stuff, but like when
yeah,
you do your business continuity and disaster recovery plan and that stuff that you'd have to do that has to happen no matter what, maybe the fail safe for that should be in your own environment again, right? Like
yeah,
I don't know how else wouldn't it be hilarious if we go all the way to the cloud just to come back again? But we've done it before, Mark. We went all the way to outsourced IT just to bring
I
it all
know.
back again. Like, I
I'll
mean,
bring it back.
maybe there's some hybrid version of that protects you from this. It's yeah,
Yeah,
that's because when
maybe.
you lose trust, like I'm a bank, no one can transact, no one can get their money, no one can spend their money, they can't do
Yeah,
anything anywhere. That it erodes your trust. Even if it's not,
yeah,
even if it wasn't Chase's problem, it's now
I know.
Chase's problem.
Exactly. Okay, so I worked with a bank in Asia and they had a very public failure and a couple of years back, and that's how I got involved with these guys. And one of the things was that people couldn't log in to their mobile app because they had an authentication problem. Okay. So one of the questions I asked the board very early on was, what were the psychological impacts to your customer base? Because the psychological impact, essentially, the question that you have to kind of ask and answer is, if I can't log in and look at my balance, do I actually have the money?
There you go.
Like, that's it. Like, I'm a customer. I can't log in. I can't see if the money is there. Does the money actually exist? And when you put it that way, and that's literally what people were like, they're calling, they're wondering, like, I don't see my money. What happened? It's like, that's the erosion of trust on the other side, right? We trust so much. It's all become so effortless, so invisible, so, just simple, from a consumer perspective. But then when something goes wrong, it's existential,
There you
you
go.
know?
There you go. You didn't. And people will, there was a study done, it's like when we were going through the privacy stuff, like what data is more private, people were asked, which information do you consider more private, your health information or your financial information? And they said 75% of them said my financial information. So even that psychological thing is what you're trying to get up against too. Like this idea that I trusted you with everything I have. Everything I have, everything that makes me able to live in this world, you have it, Bank of America.
Yeah.
You have it. Like, yes, there is a psychological toll that takes on you. And next thing you know, you're taking out all this money and shoving it in a mattress and burying it in coffee cans out back. Like that's how it works. That's how people get that crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's kind of move forward here. Money isn't the problem anymore, right? Whether it's fiat or checks or paper or whatever, that's not the problem. Money, it already lives everywhere. It's in wallets and apps and the chip on your card and the cloud behind your phone. You can manifest it, you wave your wrist around. All of the mechanics are done. Frankly, I'm kind of tired of people that profess the future of payments as some new conveyance technology. Like, okay, that's nice, but so what, right? It's not really a meaningful thing. It's commodity thinking. All that's happening is that the mechanisms get, automated and scaled, and that's the only improvements are in the reliability factor. I think that the AWS thing is a real lesson here, but it's all been done,
So the pipes are invisible now. You don't even think about the rails or who's holding the money in between the taps. You just know that double ledger works at the end of the day. That I bought it, it came out of my account, I got my stuff, you got your money, we're all good, right?
Yeah, what's left isn't the tech problem. It's the trust problem, which is what we've been talking about. All these new payment systems, digital wallets, APIs, crypto, embedded finance, autonomous agents, they're all looking at the same thing. How do you prove a promise when there's no human left in the loop? So we're going to move into the future here.
Right, let's do it. The challenge isn't that money's digital, you guys. It's that the trust went missing when we started using the apps, right? I think that's kind of what it boils down to, right?
So, yeah, for 5,000 years, trust lived between people. I give, you receive. We both know what just happened. So now machines are doing the giving and the receiving. And the humans are standing outside the transaction hoping the code got it right. So we've already started down this path, right? Cars pay tolls. Do you have one of these smart fridges? I don't know.
Some things don't need to be smart. My fridge is one of them.
I know that there are smart fridges that actually reorder groceries, but I just can't. I don't know.
Did you ever stay in Vegas where you accidentally move something from one shelf to another, and then all of a sudden they charge you $53 for a Coke? Yeah,
exactly.
That's what your refrigerator's doing to you. I don't need that at home either. There.
So basically, we're building to what's called machine to machine, M to M, right? We had B to B, B to C, C to B to B to C. Now it's M to M.
So the devices don't just talk; they settle up. And they do it when they want. It just has it's the way it's coded, right? Like it doesn't have, you're right. It has nothing to do with us when did we do this? When did we give up our entire financial lives to a machine? This is crazy.
When did we give up autonomy, right? I think we haven't given up autonomy just yet, but I think in we're talking about the future here, and machines, M2M commerce, the reason economy, if you want to call it that way, they'll use whatever mechanisms make sense in the moment, right? Tokens, stablecoins, APIs, card networks, digital wallets, whatever. It doesn't really matter. They'll be part of that negotiation process. So it's not really a core concern of some sort of machine to machine or IoT thing or whatever. It's mechanism, right? It's not really meaning. It's the syntax, not the sentence itself. So the real shift isn't how payment clears or payment, money moves and stuff, but it's who decides to pay in the first place.
So the money still moves, but the intent to move it comes from the machine.
Yeah, right. I mean, isn't this the scary part, right?
Thank you. Thank you for pointing it out. Which part I should be scared about? I appreciate that.
So I don't know if you know this guy or not, but some people might know Dave Birch, and he wrote this book. It's called Identity is the New Money. And, basically his premise is that identity is, the real mechanism here. And, he often says that banks should become identity providers because they already know who you are. They did a KYC process. They can build a model. It demonstrates credit worthiness. They can see what you spend and where you spend it. So they're this sort of logical identity provider in payment context, right? And I'm not misrepresenting him if he listens, but yeah,
So,
I think that's basically what it says.
do you buy that?
No, like yes, but no, not all the way. So the reason is I've worked in banks, so they don't really trust each other, right? They cooperate through networks and protocols, but the trust is procedural, right? It's not a personal transaction. It's not personal trust. So if bank A doesn't actually fully trust bank B and the data that's in the physical world, why would it trust its digital identities in the virtual one? So the reason bank A trusts customer A is because they have the data. They've done some sort of identity process. But bank B doesn't have the data on customer A. And now it becomes an issue of data sharing and sovereignty and completeness. And Bank B's risk models are totally different than Bank A's. And Bank A was just in the news about shady practices in some sanctioned country or whatever, right? You get the picture. Trust between banks is tricky. They're like holding knives at each other.
I get it. Like Deutsche.
Oh, I wasn't going to name names, but okay.
That could be Bank A. No one trusts them, and you got to come up with a ton of other ways to verify that that's okay, right?
Yeah.
There's a whole list of places, Mark, that I will never work because I drag people out by name. So I'm just going to add Deutsche Bank to that. I'm sure I've called them out in other places, but here's what I'll say, right?
Yeah.
There are banks that are known to not be trusted because of how they do business. You're right? And so, and I never thought about it that way. I never thought about it's procedural. They're forced to deal with each other, but they don't particularly like dealing with each other, right?
That's right.
One of them would rather have the whole banking system themselves. Like, of course you would, right?
Of course.
And, maybe U.S. banks trust each other a tiny bit more than they would trust non-U.S. banks, and maybe European banks trust each other more than they trust other banks, right? I do think there might be a way to make that work, but you're right. And so but they kind of do already trust each other, right? I mean, every time I tap my card from one bank on a reader from another, they're agreeing that I'm real enough to buy a sandwich at least, right?
I mean, that's the paradox. We've already built machine-level trust between banks. It's coded into the settlement networks themselves. It's not negotiated by humans. So the abstraction of that identity away from people has already happened. And from one, we just haven't admitted it, right? From that perspective.
So the real question isn't, can a machine trust another machine? It's who signs the permission slip.
That's right. And here's the twist, right? Maybe in the next phase, there isn't a human to sign anything at all, right? It's the machine talking to the machine. So let's talk about, agents negotiating things, right? So it just drives me nuts that people talk about this and not think about these sort of structural issues, right? So we think about, the future or today, we still think about autonomous agents as extensions of us, right? Digital representatives acting inside the rules that we set. So if this agentic commerce stuff, starts to take off, we think, oh, well, my agent will compare prices, it will renew my subscriptions, it will place orders. I've got rules and things and, whatever. They're helpful, they're polite. Eventually, essentially, all my agents are on a short leash.
Will that leash break? Serious. Will it?
I don't know. I mean, at some point, the agents, they might stop representing us and start representing themselves. Like, what happens when they're starting to pursue their own optimization, right? And I've already had teams that have written bots that had self-optimizing intentions. So think about this, right? This is sort of a thought experiment. All right, imagine you've got a GPT style system managing a workload. It's parsing prompts, it's generating output. It realizes it's running hot, right? It's got, it needs more compute. It doesn't have IT, right? It doesn't have,
It can't
a
open a
tech
ticket.
help desk.
Yeah, right.
That's right. So it negotiates, right? It talks to other agents, maybe it barters spare storage for processing or data processing. Maybe it brokers a short-term contract, maybe it just outright buys capacity itself.
So it's a marketplace, but no one's human in that marketplace, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is like, think about this. Like, the behaviors here are ancient: negotiation, scarcity, exchange, but the participants are new. So money isn't the scarce resource, right? It's intent. Who decides what's worth doing? Who decides when enough is enough, basically?
And when those agents start optimizing for themselves instead of us, honestly, whose economy is it? It's not ours anymore. Like, we definitely gave it up to the bots.
I think that's the next trust problem. Not, can the machines pay each other, but should they? And on whose behalf?
Okay, so what does paying even mean when there's no person left in the picture? We already have cars paying tolls, thermostats buying electricity by the minute. Oh, smart meters drive me crazy. Just don't even get me started.
I know.
Cloud servers scaling themselves up and down. And that's the easy versions. Machines spending human money.
Yeah. So, okay, it doesn't stop there. All right. You think about a fleet of delivery drones negotiating airspace fees in real
Oh
time.
my God.
Right. But this has to happen. This has to happen. So, it says, "Oh, I need this open here." So for a few cents, it's going to clear a corridor. Or factory systems buying and selling energy on microgrids. There's already use cases in this space. So it barters, heat and power between different neighbors.
Okay.
Or virtual
Can I
agents.
just
Yeah,
tell you?
yeah.
All for that. All for all of us having our own energy sources, and I'm serious when I say this, whether it's a nuclear reactor strapped to the side of my house or it's my solar panels, I'm good with this. If I don't own it and I can store it and I can sell it to my neighbor and we can do it on the blockchain and we can do that separate from the utility company and the grid, I am all for it.
I think I'm okay with that too, because don't you kind of land in a space where your agents or your machines or your house or whatever it is, it's not just that they're going to spend the money that you've got, but they might actually earn some money, right?
Right.
Um,
Why does
yeah,
it have so why can't that whole system ever work in my benefit? It seems like this whole system always works in someone else's benefit. The banks, the energy companies, the car providers. It's always someone else's winning, but not Renee. Like, that's what I'm not okay with. I'm not okay with the
yeah.
Internet of Things becoming the economy of things and that economy of things not working in my favor.
I'm with you there. I think, but you know what? Like, if we're not careful as an industry, and I think we aren't, because when have we ever been, right? But I think that, like, as long as it's billionaire tech bros that run the show, they're going to rig the system for billionaire tech bros, right?
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
But
So,
But socialists don't run these things. I can't, like, Bernie's never going to show up to run crypto. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how we get out of it. Okay, but the Internet of Things becomes the
yeah,
economy of things, right?
yes, I hope, right, that those things are just going to spend their money. They're going to earn some money. I hope, right? If you get a self-driving car, you could rent it back out, like it's trunk space while it's parked. Or, you have a home battery, you could sell power back to the grid. Like, that's happening today.
We
But,
do that.
like, not it's sort of like, I've got solar panels and I get money back, but it's not great.
I do the same thing, and
Could
my energy company went out of business. So
yeah, see, like,
yeah, because there just wasn't enough for them
yeah,
because they couldn't make enough money, right? They couldn't
yeah,
make money.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, so
That's the thing. Like,
Okay,
go
so
ahead.
which means the definition of payer and merchant collapses. Everything becomes both. We all do Both. I have resources, you have resources. I'm selling them, you're buying them, you're selling them, I'm buying them. It's all just one big transaction ball.
I think, you know what? Like, as much as I hate to say that's where things are going, I think that's exactly where things are going. When I was with WorldPay, we did a bunch of research on Internet of Things.
Mm.
And part of that Internet of Things stuff was all about these kind of trading systems, Internet of Things, buying and selling energy, or buying and selling space, or buying and selling memory. And when you look at it, the size of the transaction is much smaller, and the frequency of the transaction is much, much higher. So, today we have X number of transactions a day from people paying, stuff, or systems paying people, or, people paying systems, or whatever. I think that the number is going to continue to grow, and it'll grow exponentially as the economy of things gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And, the frequency, because the convenience, the mechanization of payments has been so successful. It's so easy to move money around that we'll be able to move money around for infinitesimally small activity. And it's just gonna be huge. Huge. Anyways.
So it's wild. Okay. We started in a museum full of coins and clay tablets, and now we've ended up here, a world where the only thing left is making promises to anybody else. The only thing left making promises are machines.
Yeah.
Machines. But think about it. We're right. So we're back to that idea. Like the machine. At that point, it's pure brand trust. Pure brand, because it's not a glass box. It's a black box. That black box is messing with my money, your money, and the corporation's money. It's really unbelievable. We're almost back to that place of uncertainty that we had with sticks. We're back to stick uncertainty. That's where
stick uncertainty. Yeah, well, from clay to code, right? It's all the same reflex. Record a promise, make it portable, hope that the other side keeps their word. The form has changed, right? Mud, metal, paper, plastic, photons. But the purpose it never changes. It never changes.
We've made trust faster, lighter, and quieter, and much harder to feel. And that's not good for humans, right?
Yeah, I guess it's not. The real evolution here isn't money, it's distance. Every innovation just moves us one step further from the moment two people look each other in the eye and say, I'll pay you back.
And maybe the next version doesn't look anyone in the eye at all, right?
There's no eyes.
There's no eyes to be had.
Yeah, maybe the last thing left, and the last human thing left in commerce is the idea that a promise still matters, even when no one's around to make it.
5,000 years later, we're going to be asking the same question. Do you trust me to pay you back?
That's right. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening in. This has been a lot of fun. Subscribe, share, like, do all the things. Our email address is nostalgicnerdspodcast@gmail.com.
Definitely reach out. Mark reads the mail. So if you guys want to hear something, if there's something we haven't covered that you want us to cover, totally reach out. And if you're anyone we insulted, feel free to let your lawyers know. How about that? Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks.